You're now listening to Hack and Grow Rich with Shaahin and his co-host Bart Baggett, where we discuss hacking your way to success and the unconventional paths to unreasonable success with the people who've been there. And now, the author of Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult, Shaahin.
All right.
Rock and roll.
There we go. Are you ready for this?
Yes, sir.
All right. This is Shaahin Castrina with the 10-Minute Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm excited about my guest today. I saw him on Brad Lee's Dropping Bombs. Brad's a good friend of mine. I have Shaahin with me here today. Shaahin, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Honored to be on. I'm so excited.
Hey, you wrote an incredible book, obviously Billion, How I Became the King of the Thrill Pill Cult. And that's with, herbal ecstasy, which from what I understand did $1 billion in sales. So let's get to your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, that was a pretty extraordinary product to develop. And how did that come about? Like, how do you, when you sell something that like $1 billion is a game changer. How do you come up with a product like that and then sell $1 billion?
Well, the whole story gets pretty deep, and I know we've got 10 minutes, so let's compress and get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
Started when I was 15 years old, started a company, invented this pill. The supply of illegal drugs had dried up, one in particular, ecstasy in the rave scene. I was a 15-year-old kid, had left home, was sleeping on the beach, sleeping in abandoned buildings, managed to get myself a mentor, got involved in the electronic music scene. And then I decided that I was going to invent this drug, and I did it. And then I had to.
And I can extend the podcast. So forget 10 minutes right now, because you can't go, well, I just invented it. Okay, you're 15 years old. How do you know how to invent a pill?
You don't. But the fact is that I was relentless. Coming to this country in the early 80s as an immigrant from Iran, I didn't speak a word of English. And I thought the purpose of going to school every day was to get your ass kicked. I thought that's what happened at school. You go to get your ass kicked. And that's what would happen to me every day. And I realized through those lessons that I was building grit. I didn't realize it at the time, but I know it now. And it made me tougher. It made me relentless. So by the time I was 15 and looking around me and seeing all this wealth, but my family was poor. My family was a poor Iranian family. My dad worked at a dry cleaners, a pizza shops, just trying to make ends meet. I realized that I wanted more. And I read all the great books, Og Mandino, Napoleon Hill, Tony Robbins, Stuart Wilde. I read all these great authors and later made several of them my friends, of the ones that were living, of course. I realized that, man, like, I want that stuff. I want the Porsche and the beautiful girlfriend and the big houses and the boats. And I want all of that. But there was no path for me. So what I did was, by the time I was 15, I said, dude, I'm out. And I left. I left home. I burned my ships and decided to go out there into the world. And the way that it worked, and this is the most common question that people ask, is how do you even know how to make a pill? I didn't. Yeah. I had no idea. But what I did have is relentlessness. Ruthlessness to myself, to know what things I'm good at and what things I needed to enlist other people to do. And I tell people this all the time. Money is just one way to influence people. If you don't have it, you shouldn't let it become a roadblock for you. And I didn't. I would talk to 100 people, and out of 100 people, 99 of them would say, hey, F off, kid. But that one person would say yes. And that's all I needed to get going. And that's what happened. I opened up books. I opened up this thing called the Yellow Pages to young explain to some audiences, which had everybody's phone number in it. And I started making phone calls, and they said, no, no, no. I would show up at their door and knock. Hi, I'm here. I thought we told you no. I'm here anyway. And I would do that until I got the yes that I needed. And that's how I made it.
And give me a couple of the key yeses in a business like that. Because a lot of great things happen that you're just kind of going through. And I have to, I have this idea for this pill. Number one is, how did you know what to put in this pill? And it's okay to say I had no idea, so I partnered with somebody. And then you had to get somebody to make this pill, and then you had to sell this pill. So I'm not letting you off on the hook here. I want to hear those three answers.
I love answering that stuff. Those are great questions. So one great example, is there was this author, the guy who wrote the textbook on drugs for all the school districts. This guy's name was Andrew Weil. Andrew Weil now is a famous TV doctor. You can look him up. His stuff is great. He's written several books. Well, I called him. I managed to look him up in the yellow pages, and I called him and I said, man, this is what I want to do. How do I do it? And he was very forthcoming. Nobody had ever called him before, cold on the phone, asking something like this. And he said, well, call this guy, and this guy. And these are some ingredients that I might use. I called those guys. They said, oh, if this guy referred you, then you must be legit and let us help you. And they helped me. And I got books and I read and I went to the library and I went to Chinatown and I met with these herbalists and all these people. And I used one calling card to get in other calling cards. And then I allowed that to allow my network to expand. I managed to get myself a girlfriend, which was difficult, being that I had nowhere to live, no money, no food to eat, none of that stuff. I managed to get myself a girlfriend. Her father was the superintendent, accountant, some stuffy job at some school district. So he would wake up early in the morning to leave. As he left out the front door, I would enter into the back door. And with herbs and plants and books, I would cook up prototypes in her kitchen until I got something that worked. I did not have enough money to buy the machine that puts the ingredients into the pills. So what we would do is we would roll them up by hand. I learned that honey was a good mixture. So we would roll it up. So they would be these goo-filled, in the early days, these goo-filled black balls that we tried to make look like pills and that I'd be selling at the clubs. And one day I decided, hey, this stuff is really, really good now, really potent. It duplicates the effects of ecstasy good enough. Let's take it to the drug dealers. And that's what I did. I took it to the illicit drug market, but selling a legal product. And nobody had ever done that before. And it blew people away.
That is an unbelievable, just an unbelievable story. So where is this herbal ecstasy now? How did you exit from that? Whatever became that?
So I tell the story again in my book, Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. You guys check it out. The whole story is in there, all the crazy stuff that happened in those days. But I usually like to think of the crescendo as I'm now no longer sleeping on the beach, no longer sleeping in abandoned buildings. I now am making hundreds of millions of dollars, hiring all the people in Venice Beach working for me. I owned all those buildings. I mean, we rented them, but they were all mine. All the business was mine. I was controlling the entire area. And the government was very interested in what we were doing, trying to shut us down, but we weren't doing anything illegal. And I had fallen asleep drooling on the passenger seat of a brand new Lamborghini that I had purchased. I had a collection of exotic cars, first class everywhere, boats, yachts, movie stars, rock stars, the whole thing. Everything was around me. And I was doing incredibly well. And the news broke that we had broken $1 billion in revenue in that company. So what I did was I started to figure out what my next step was. And I learned an important lesson. I learned that it's good to have an accountant, but I also learned that accountants are not the guys that count the money that's in the duffel bags filled with cash that are piled up in your office. That is not what accountants do. For anybody watching the 10-minute Entrepreneur, great takeaway.
They don't want to know that you have cash in your office.
They absolutely don't.
Yeah.
And from there, it became a wild ride. That company I exited. I moved on to inventing digital vaporization. I have patents in that area, several patents in that area. That company went public. Now, all you see is, as far as vapes and vaporization, were built on technology that I built and designed. And from there, I went on to looking at the Amazon space, which is what I do now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that now we're shifting to accelerated intelligence. So you have absolutely figured out how to sell on Amazon. Why don't you now I give you the floor for 5 minutes to tell us what you know, how you can help my audience of entrepreneurs and what you know about that space and just kind of your wisdom there.
Totally. So I started looking at this little guy, this little nerdy looking guy, bald dude named Jeff Bezos. Some of you might have heard of him by now.
Did okay.
He did okay, but back in those days, he wasn't the same guy he is now. And back in those days, you could reach out to Jeff. You could email him, jeff@amazon.com. He would respond, or someone would respond. You could get him on the phone if you needed to. He was very accessible. And so we started learning more about this. And I started to think to myself, man, this is very interesting. At the same time, I developed a brain pill, a nootropic, something that improves cognition. At that time, it was a product called Accelerol. It's still available on Amazon, Accelerol or Focus Plus, but it was expensive, $120 a month. So I thought, man, how do I sell this? I thought, hey, and we heard through the grapevine that Jeff had opened up the platform to third-party sellers. He no longer wanted to be books. He wanted to be everything. All right, cool. Took me 15 minutes. We already had it in there and our account was approved. I 15 minutes to open a seller account and list on there. And I listed Accelerol. I woke up the next day to hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of orders. I thought, man, there's something more to this guy than meets the eye. So I started looking at Amazon. What I realized was that Bezos was not some little nerdy chump. He was a genius disruptor. And what he was doing was something that is unprecedented. He was taking cheap money from Wall Street, pumping it into Silicon Valley, and building what looked to be a bookstore, but in fact was the ultimate disruptor in commerce and e-commerce, and which is what we see today as far as Amazon goes. And I decided that I was going to dedicate the next several years to learning everything I could about this platform. And that's what I did. And people started coming to me and say, Shaahin, you are absolutely crushing it with your products on Amazon. Can I sell a product on Amazon? And we said, yeah, totally. And so I developed this course. It's called FBA Seller Course, fbasellercourse.com. For your viewers, for the 10-minute entrepreneur, it's normally $200. It's a 1-hour course, everything you need, A to Z, to create a product. How do you find a product? How do you get reviews? How do you sell on Amazon? I'm going to give it to every single one of your viewers and listeners for free. No obligation.
I love that. You heard free.
Free. You'll never hear from us again. I just want to try to empower as many people as possible to start these recurring revenue businesses. So I'm going to give out my direct email. This is how you reach me directly. It is darkzess@gmail.com, darkzess@gmail.com. Reach out to me with the code 10-minute entrepreneur. Put that in the subject heading. I will personally respond and give you the 1-hour course, the crash course, everything you need to know about Amazon for free. If you're interested in my book, check out Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult, wherever books are found. The Audible book is also out now too.
That is so cool. Unbelievable. I love entrepreneurial stories. I don't care if it's a lemonade stand. Now I have to admit, herbal ecstasy was definitely caught my attention. And when I saw it sold $1 billion in products, that's the next level. That was a big eye catcher. Listen, Shaahin, I said that right.
Shaahin. Yeah.
There we go. I'm like, I keep looking. I'm like, okay. Whenever I see it, I'm like, I always go through this paranoia that I'm going to say somebody's name wrong. Shaahin, it is so great to have you on the podcast. Just an incredible story. I'm so glad you took the time to be with us. And obviously, they know how to connect with you on that email. I don't know if there's any other platforms they can connect with you on, but this is where you get to let anybody know.
Yeah, so check us out. We've got a podcast called Hack and Grow Rich. If you're checking this out on Hack and Grow Rich, make sure to subscribe to the 10-minute entrepreneur. We will include a link below. But for us, we've got our show called Hack and Grow Rich. Please check that out. You can get a hold of me directly. Again, that email, darkzess@gmail.com, darkzess@gmail.com. For my more in-depth course, you can check out fbasellercourse.com. That's fulfillment by Amazon, sellercourse.com. And if there's anything I can do to support you, coach you along the way, help you succeed, reach out to me. I love hearing from people. I love having great conversations with interesting people.
Shaahin, it's great to have you on the podcast. Audience, reach out to him. Incredible book, Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult.